Hello everyone, and welcome to another game from round 9 of the Gibraltar Tradewise Chess Festival. Here we have a game between Levan Aronian and Indian Grandmaster Seturaman Panayapan Seturaman. I don't think all of that his name, I think part of it's his father's name, but not really sure, so if any of you know, do share in the comments. And here we can really see that you don't really want to face a well-prepared Levan Aronian. So let's see this game. And at the time I'm making this video, there are 5 players actually tied in first place with one more round to go. So there's really no telling who can win this tournament. Aronian opens with c4, the English opening. We have e6, the Agincourt defense, g3, d5, bishop to g2, and knight to f6. Knight to f3, d captures on c4, and queen to a4 check. Bishop blocks, queen captures on c4 and c5. Knight to e5, we have queen to c8, and here there are a lot of moves for white. White can castle, white can play something like knight captures on d7 if he wants, d3 is an option. But here Aronian plays queen to d3, and this definitely looks like some sort of a home preparation sorcery. Knight to c6 was played, and here Aronian immediately plays knight captures on d7. And this is probably the idea of queen to d3. Now black has to capture with the knight. If black would capture with the queen, then after queen captures and knight captures, Aronian has this bishop captures on c6. And after b captures, he can play simply d3, go knight to a3, control c4, and develop all of his pieces and attack the weak c5 and c6 pawn. So that's probably the idea of this queen to d3 move. So knight captures on d7, knight has to capture, and we have knight to c3. Bishop to e7, queen to b5 now. You can see that this is move 11, and Aronian already played 4 times with the queen. a6, we have queen to a4, that's 5 times, and knight to d4. Castles by both sides, and d3 now. Here you might think an interesting move would be something like b5, taking advantage of the queen being on a4, but actually after this b5 move you can simply move the queen to d1, and after the rook moves as it's attacked on a8 from the bishop, white simply plays a4, and after b4 knight to e4, and it's not really an accomplishment here for black. After white develops, this c5 pawn will be a weakness. Maybe it's playable. I don't think Seturaman wanted to go for something like this. So after d3, knight to b6, kicking the queen away, queen back to d1. So that's 6 moves by the queen, and she ended up from where she came from. Rook to d8, bishop to d2, and queen to d7 now. Rook to c1, rook a to c8, both players developing. b3, h6, and king to h1. Aronian will soon have ideas of pushing f4 and such, and he doesn't want his king to be on g1 on this perhaps dangerous diagonal. Knight to d5, we have knight captures, e captures, and e3 here. Knight moves to c6, and queen to h5. And this is it seems like a lashing out move, but it's actually not. It's really a useful move. It pressures the d5 square. The bishop and the queen are now attacking it. This bishop doesn't really know where it wants to go. It can't really go to f6 because you lose the pawn on c5, and it can't go to d6 because then queen or bishop captures on d5. But that's only a part of it. The real threat is bishop to h3, winning the exchange here. So we have queen to d6, getting out of the bishop's way, and here Aronian pushes f4. We have a5, a4 now, preventing b5, and rook to b8. Now Seturaman wants to play b5. e4, d captures on e4, bishop captures on e4, and b6 now. g4, knight to d4, and bishop to c3. And this is a very exciting moment in the game, as the real question is, can Seturaman capture the pawn on b3? Well, if that happens, let's say knight captures on b3, you get this bishop to e5, now attacking the queen and also pinning the rook. let's say queen e6, as you do have to prevent those pawns there, and now comes rook to e1, eyeing the queen on e6. Bishop to d6, let's say, and after bishop to c3, it's actually a terrible position for black because black is losing a queen. The threat is bishop to h7 check, and there's really no way to stop this. Only way you can stop it is queen to d7 or c8. If you play something like this, then white is simply breaking through with the g5. Let's say knight d4, blocking the bishop on c3, but now comes f5. Bishop to f8, rook to g1, improving. If you capture, then f6 is coming. You're threatening checkmate on h7. After you block this, simply rook captures on g5, and it's all over. Bishop g7, rook can capture, pawn captures, queen captures, and there is really nothing you can do here. Queen f7, and now comes queen h7, and pawn captures on g7 with check. King e7, and now bishop to d5, opening up a discovered check. It doesn't really matter, even if you capture the pawn, then comes rook f1 check, you win the queen that way. This is just one of the variations that allows black to keep his queen for a while. So after this bishop to c3, of course you can't capture the b3 pawn, that leads to a terrible position for black. Saturman tried f5, and this comes with the idea that he wants to sacrifice a pawn to stop Aronian pushing those pawns. G captures on f5, and now bishop to f6 blocking. Rook to g1 now, as now you did stop the pawns, but now you opened up the g file for the rook. Rook to e8, and this rook to e8 might not have been the greatest move, as there's a pretty obvious threat of queen captures on h6, so you probably want to prevent this. King to h8, simply getting the king out of the pin. But even if king h8, then rook g4, other rook is coming to g1. Sturman didn't want to play this passive position, so he tried an active move. Let's say it's an active move. Rook e8. Queen captures on h6 was played, rook b to d8, and now rook c to e1. Here rook to e7 was played, and here Aronian played rook to e3, and in this position Saturman resigned the game. Why did he resign the game? Well, Aronian's plan is pretty clear. Rook to h3 is coming, but that's not the only reason. You can't move any of the black pieces. You can't move the knight. If you move the knight, you get bishop captures on f6. This is winning. You can't move the queen. If you move the c6 is covered, e6 is covered by the pawn. If you move the queen anywhere from the 6th rank, then simply queen captures on f6 is winning. So basically all you can do is you can't move the bishop. If you move the bishop, f6 is coming, opening up the light square bishop. So basically all you can do is maybe play some meaningless rook moves, and this will allow Aronian to complete his attack. Let's say rook to a7, rook to h3 is coming, that's unstoppable. Rook back to c7, and now queen to g6, preparing to lift the rook all the way to h7. Rook to f7, now rook comes to h7, let's say rook d7, and here rook to e1. A very important move, as it will take control of the e file. Let's say rook e7, countering this, and now comes queen to h5. There is the threat of a rook to h8 checkmate, and there is no stopping this. This is just one line. Black can play some more moves. Let's say queen captures, you capture, and now after queen to e8 check, it's all over. If you play king to h7, which is the only other move other than blocking with the queen, you get rook e3, and then rook h3 is checkmate. So only thing you could do, maybe queen to f8, but now simply bishop to d5 check. If you go king h7, you get queen to h5 checkmate. If you go king h8, then you simply grab the queen on f8, and if you try something like rook f7, then simply capture. Neither the queen or the king can capture it. King moves, rook g1 check, and after you capture the queen, it's mate in one no matter what black does. Simply bishop to g6. But that's the thing I really like about this game. After this rook to e3 move by Aronian, let me just find the move, rook to e3. After this move, Saturman saw that there was nothing for him to look for in this game, and he decided to resign. Although there is no immediate crush, but you know, in some 10 moves there is 10-15 moves, and he saw that. So yeah, that's the game. Like I said, at the time I'm making this video, there are 5 players tied for first place. Aronian here after winning this game, Hikaru Nakamura, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, I think Daniel Dubov is there, and also Richard Rapport. So 5 very strong players, and I think maybe more can achieve this great result of 7 points out of 9, but not all games are over. So we'll see. It's very hard to say. Commentators said that maybe there is a chance we'll see a Nakamura versus Aronian match in the final round of the Gibraltar Chess Festival, but as both of them had white pieces today, it doesn't seem likely. But you never know. It's the computer that does the pairings. So that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon.